information, but we will get into the work.
Yes. Okay.
Good evening, Miss Tami. Let's roll those questions. We got a bunch on the list.
Yes. And I think you can see right from the start, right? Because you were in before. So you see Dr. Rob, I have attended. Okay. I have attended S&on meetings for the past 9 months and have read many of your books. Great. You can find those on Amazon.com under Rob Weiss.
Tami,
I'm just
stop.
saying.
Let's work.
Okay. My husband attended SILA for 3 weeks, returning home earlier this fall. We purchased the Covenant Eyes porn blocker as part of his aftercare. I recently found out he has relapsed, not a slip, with pornography use and has been using as soon as 2 weeks after he left treatment, apparently finding a way to get past the blocker on his devices. I'm doing my best to reinforce my boundaries, and although he has said he is comfortable with his addiction, he is still attending some meetings and meeting with his CSAT. He seems to be trying, but the pornography remains on his devices. I'm staying emotionally sober with the help of my HP and my S&on program and sponsor. I am staying peaceful and serene while dealing with anger, resentment, and continuing betrayal. I'm going to take a good for you for like taking care of you. Okay, my question is in your experience, do you find people with porn addictions have a tendency to relapse, and what is the best way for me to handle it? That's a great question. So what do you think?
So, well, it just strikes me that the question at the end is 3 sentences, and then there's this whole long thing at the beginning, and I think that question could have been answered in 1 sentence as it is in the bottom, unless whoever this is really had a lot to say about what he or she is going through. And so, Tami, we can answer the question, but I wonder, don't you think there's another question inside of there that or 2 or 3? Because I've been writing stuff down.
Yeah. So the first thing I picked up on was the Covenant Eyes, and it's a blocker. And Dr. Rob has talked before, and there's information on our websites about a blocker versus a filter, because in my experience, an addict will game around Covenant Eyes, or well, not just Covenant Eyes, any blocker, and Dr. Rob has talked about this before. For a young person, a blocker is a good thing, although with their technological savvy, they probably can get around it too. But a filter that gives them pause, like that they know that there's going to be a report that's going to go to his CSAT therapist or to his sponsor or both, so that they have the ability to see. Now I see, you were looking at porn here. What was happening, 2 hours before? Why did you choose to do that type of thing? So that there's an opportunity for discussion about kind of like an autopsy on this relapse. So that was the first thing that I picked up on. I was also, you heard me stop at he's comfortable with his addiction. So that kind of intrigued
and that
me.
Actually, Tami, I thought it might be, I'm being kind, he's comfortable having had a slip, or comfortable that he's struggling.
Okay.
I'd like to think of it that way. But I completely get if he's comfortable with addiction, it's a whole different issue. So I want to answer the questions that have not been answered here, and I was writing them down. 2 weeks after he left treatment, he relapsed, or is it a he?
Yeah.
Husband. Okay.
Yeah.
2 weeks after he relapsed, he was not in a slip. He was in relapse, which the difference is a slip is something that happens. You tell everyone to try to get better, work on it openly. A relapse is you don't tell anyone, you keep doing it and nobody knows. That's relapse. So in any case, I heard the word relapse, not slip. And then I realized, then there are a whole bunch of stuff confused me that I saw, like something about something about me. It's okay for him to, or he's been able to keep the porn on his devices. So I noticed that. And then I heard the word trying in there. And I don't think so I'll go by one. Trying is not something you do in recovery. I could try, I could try to do something all day long. It doesn't mean I'm actually doing it. And addicts will try so hard and they really try. And they'll tell you, by the way, I'm trying. But that doesn't mean they're actually doing the work, or what they're trying at is actually equal to what they need to be doing. In any case, here are my concerns. He had a relapse, not a slip. He began using 2 weeks after he left treatment. And let me just say, that ain't about treatment. That's about the person who leaves and for example, why didn't I hear about it? I work in and out of our treatment center. If somebody calls and they say, or calls Tami and says, I left treatment 2 weeks ago and I had a slip and I don't know what to do, Tami will put them in touch with the person who saw them for therapy while they were with us. And then, 9 times out of 10, I'm involved or I'm supportive or I'm actually on the screen if they need me. So just know that if someone went to treatment and they slipped right away, there are all kinds of things discussed about what to do about that and how to handle that. And so it should never be a relapse, because these men and women are taught, we don't treat women, but are taught exactly what to do in these situations. So what I feel is a lot of willfulness. It feels like I'm going to do it my way, and this is the way it is. And I guess the other side of it is, and Tami, you're going to have to help me with this. This person said, I'm staying peaceful and serene while dealing with anger, resentment, and continuing betrayal. And, I respect that. I admire that you went to S-Anon, that you're doing whatever it takes to be at peace inside of yourself while all this crap goes on around you. But that doesn't mean not to pay attention to the crap that's going on around you. And feelings matter. They may not be the thing you should act on necessarily, not all the time, but they are there for a reason. They're there to tell you something. And if you're feeling badly about something, even though inside of yourself you feel whole and at peace, something bad is going on. And let me tell you, 4 out of 5 of the things I heard in that letter are bad. And here you go. Why don't you tell that person to call Tami or reach out to Tami? We'll take him back for 2 weeks and recycle him, because I bet you he didn't stay all 4, which is the full program. Anyway, whether we are or are not continuing to be helpful, I would not feel comfortable being a spouse accepting as much as it looks like you're accepting, especially if this person took the money out of our family to go to treatment. So something is not right. And whether you don't know a good enough locksmith to change the locks on your doors, or he's pushing you around the place, either way, I think you're being way too nice. That's how I think, and thinking way too much about being at peace, where here I want to throw a plate, but it's all good. Tami?
I don't think it was a mistake when this person said he's comfortable with his addiction. I mean, I really do key in on that, because he is comfortable with his addiction. And did the first 2 weeks after he got out of treatment, did he show up for the alumni meeting? Did he say to our staff who's on the alumni meeting every Tuesday, I'm really struggling, like, was he there Tuesday after he got out on Saturday and going, it's hard to be out in the real world. I don't know what he was doing, but he had a specific aftercare plan that had something for every single day, after he got back. Did he follow that stuff? I don't know. So there's a lot. I'm glad that you're not taking on ownership of his addiction, but yeah, I mean, I know that there are times that people stay in relationships, et cetera, and that's all fine, no judgment, but like your safety with the chaos and everything, and his lack of empathy for you, that he, like, it bothers you, and he's like, well, I'm comfortable with my addiction, so that
Well, if you've read Out of the Doghouse, you know what an appropriate response to your frustration and unhappiness would be, and it certainly wouldn't be, I'm comfortable with my addiction. And one thing, if we do nothing else in treatment other than teach people how to not act out, we focus on what they've done to their spouses. We ask spouses to write us a letter so we can bring their voice in. This is what I went through. This is what happened to me. The whole group hears it because they've also done this to their spouses. So, and then we involve spouses online. So the voice of the spouse and the involvement of the spouse is really important in treatment. And that's because they need to know everything and they need to feel safe. This person is not just doing things to leave you feeling safe. They're doing things to leave you feeling unsafe. And I would be, I think all of this is very concerning. If they have a therapist, I'd want to go into the therapy and say, I'm really worried. Anyway, Tami, I hope that was helpful. Let's keep going.
Well, and going back to your trying, I hear all the time from partners where they say, he's really trying, he's seeing his therapist, once a week. That's, all he's doing, or what minimal he's doing. And then you find out he's been lying to his therapist for years, so anyway, okay.
Can I do trying just for a second? So this is, you remember John Seeley? John Seeley taught me this many, many years ago. So here
I do
you see
remember
I'm
John Seeley.
I'm holding up a pen. Now, Tami asked me to drop it.
Drop it.
Well, I'm trying. Ask me to try
Drop it.
harder.
Try harder.
I am
Try
really, really
harder.
trying. You have no idea how hard I am trying to make this happen. And now, instead of trying, I'm going to drop the pen. That's the
You
difference.
took
You know?
action.
I could try all day long. I do want to say this though, Tami, which I think is important is, by the way, you can feel free to share that with friends who are not working on their recovery. But I do also want to give just a nod that some addicts come out of treatment and they are discombobulated. They are overwhelmed. They are, they come out very vulnerable, very open. I mean, that's part of the process. And then they're back in the world, which they may have a real difficult time negotiating. And they may go back to some of their behavior, but but there are enough lessons and cues in the work for that person to know when they're in trouble, to seek help when they're in trouble, no matter what's going on inside. And they certainly know that acting out is tied to something that they're feeling emotionally that they're not dealing with. So anyway, as much as I want to have empathy for this addict, it sounds like you're getting the hood pulled over your head, and it's a sad thing.
Next question. After 40 years marriage and 3 years separation, my husband hasn't rebuilt trust. He did a disclosure and passed polygraph, but I don't believe it's completely the truth. My counseling says my husband is remarkable for supporting me financially in the separation, yet I'm not fulfilling my conjugal responsibility to him. I don't trust him. I'm not interested in sex. My husband is full of shame and depressed. He only sees I think that might, a CSAT candidate once a week. Any suggestions for me? We are in our late 60s.
Why don't you start, Tami? I'm writing notes. I have some ideas, but I'd love to hear from you. 3 years separated.
I want to pull my hair out with you're not fulfilling your conjugal responsibility. Oh, wait, my counseling says, so your
Right.
therapist is saying this to you, not he's not saying his therapist is telling
Her
him
own
this. So,
therapist is
oh
telling
my
her
gosh, yeah, like I'm just in
that
disbelief.
he is remarkable. Okay, well, this is not hard. Let's just do this question. This is abuse. This is abuse by your therapist. You are being abused by your therapist. Well, that's better. There is no exchange, like you give me this and I give you that. There is no marriage or relationship except the unhealthy ones that are made on those kinds of trades, especially something so personal. And second, you haven't lived together for 3 years. I would pay attention to that. He is not giving you money. You spent 40 years together. If you are in separation, he has a responsibility to give you half of what he owns. And by the way, if you divorce him, I would assume that whatever state you are, you'll get a good half. So how is it in any way, he should be lucky that you're still talking to him, no less complaining. Look, you don't live with him. You don't trust him. Tell him to go find somebody else to love and have sex with. That you're happy living by yourself. And by the way, I would ask you to ask yourself, in the last 3 years, have I found myself feeling more happy, more comfortable, more at peace when I'm not dealing with him? And that answer has to be guided by how much you're investing in yourself and how much you're investing in looking past and backward at the relationship. But if you're working hard on your own peace healing, you might find that it's a lot more fun to not have this person making you so miserable. You may look back on 40 years and say, the last 20 weren't so great. I'm not, under these circumstances, I think I would pay the most attention to, why have I not gone back? Most of the couples I work with, when you're getting on the 3rd year of separation, they're saying something without really saying it. And this is not a happy situation as it's being described. It would have to change significantly for you two to get back together. And maybe you should go have a good life, and not have this person constantly leaving you mistrusting and uncomfortable. This is not a marriage I'd want to be in, even after 40 years.
Yeah, and you've been separated for 3 years. Think about 3 years from now. If it's the same way, are you going to be happy that you spent 3 more years in the same place? And if you are, again, no judgment, but I love what Dr. Rob said about, think about, are you happier, when you're not dealing with this? And again, everybody gets to choose. So, we're not telling anybody what to do. We're sharing ideas so that you can maybe vision things in different ways than you might have thought about. Okay, ready for the next one?
Yes,
As a
ma'am.
betrayed spouse, how can I help SA husband become more transparent? He truly believes he is being honest, but sometimes he leaves pieces of his story out because he believes they aren't important. But when I ask questions, he reveals info that I feel so incredibly important. He just misses the opportunity. He's been in therapy for 6 months, sober for 2 years. I'm getting great support as well. Love to hear that. Thank you.
I sigh.
I know.
And I only sigh because, and I think most of the partners in this room are women. I don't know if that's true, but it makes me so sad that these women are more protective of their men than they are of themselves. And they're more invested in these crappy relationships that haven't been good well for years than they are in truly finding themselves in and peace with not being connected to this person and not making it work out. So anyway, that's sort of an overview, but it makes me very sad. I like to see people empowered. If they're empowered to make a relationship work, God bless you, make it go. But if you're empowered to make your relationship work and the other person is a rock, then you're just going back to an empty well over and over again. It's like Tami said, 3 years later, are you going to feel good about continuing to go back to that well? And it just seems to me that many of the women in this room have such compassion and love for us that you're willing to put us first. And I'm not saying that you have to put yourselves first, but we both have to come first. And certainly not the addict. In any case, it is not your job to make someone be more transparent. It is their job to choose to be more transparent because they love you. If I love you and care about you, I don't want you to be worried about things. I don't want you to think I might have done this or done that. And obviously, if you feel like he's not being transparent, then he's, oh, did we not use the right word? Lying. This is way too nice of an approach to this particular question. This is how I would read this. Can I reread it?
Yes.
Sure, thanks. As a betrayed spouse, it's unbelievably frustrating to me that my husband will not be more transparent. He is lying by omission on a regular basis by leaving parts of the story out because he doesn't want me to know them. When I ask questions, which makes perfect sense considering I don't know the whole story, then he actually reveals some more pieces if I push him hard enough. He refuses to tell the truth. So I would stop right there. That he refuses to tell the truth was my translation of he just misses the opportunity to be truthful. I think my guess is this is a fairly new betrayed spouse who doesn't understand the gravity of the problem. And when I say the problem, I mean the lying, the gaslighting, the it's all this, but it's really all that. I don't think this person has really begun to deal with the magnitude of the problem, because if you have an addict in your life, and they've hurt you so deeply, it would be very hard for me to continue in a relationship with them when they are still controlling the information. One of the key things that we teach in treatment is that you no longer control the relationship. You no longer, not that you ever did, you don't have to control the money. You've given all that up to this person because you hurt them. And I wrote a book called Out of the Doghouse. It means the person who cheated is in the doghouse and they have to earn their way back into the house and be equal with their partner. It's not your job to help him find his way to get back in there. It's his job to talk to other people. How did you make this up with your wife? And then to follow some things. You shouldn't be asking these questions, because the questions that you should be asking, I think, are much harder and more painful than the ones you are asking. But Tami, I said a lot of stuff as usual. Do you have something you want to add?
Yeah, well, I do. And I know this is a brief snippet, but what I hear is he was sober for 2 years, and that's according to him, I suspect. And he's been in therapy for 6 months. So what was he doing the first 18 months? And and I'm hopeful that he's doing lots of recovery things. So asking, doing the 12 steps to sponsor, doing our drop-in groups that are free, listening to podcasts. I hope he's on here with you. Because if he's only going to a 50-minute session with his therapist, and hopefully it's a qualified therapist, you didn't even indicate if he is seeing a qualified therapist, because a generalist therapist isn't able to hold, addicts accountable. So there's lots more to that. I'm with Dr. Rob. the thing I thought for you is, what healthy boundary do you need to set? If he, if you catch him in another lie, which you will, is it a therapeutic separation within your house? I mean, what consequences? No, that's not the right word. What safety boundaries do you need so that you are not, putting up with, the lying? But I agree with Dr. Rob, the out of the doghouse talks about, if you want this relationship, here's what you need to do. You don't have to do that, but then don't be in the relationship. You can't straddle the fence. So.
And I want to thank, because Tami, we're both saying the same thing in one little sentence, and I want to like capture, which is, to me, you're putting up with much more pain and than you need to. And I don't know if it comes from naivety, or I just didn't understand that what recovery was and what they were supposed to do, or whether it comes from your dedication to not wanting to see this person as being hurtful as he is. But I don't think either of us as friends or colleagues would put up with this kind of behavior and say, oh, well, they're working on it. I just don't think that would be okay. So let's keep going.
Okay. I'm the betrayed partner. My SA husband primarily acted out through fantasy and masturbation. We have a full therapeutic disclosure coming up in a few weeks. I'm wondering how much detail I should ask about.
This is such a great question. So this is how I would recommend you handle it. I would sit down and I would take a journal or some kind of piece of paper or a pad, and I would write down every question I might ever want to ask. It could be 3 pages, single spaced if you like, and then bring it to your therapist, and then bring it to your support group and read through it. I will answer your question, but I also think that my feedback is good, but go to a betrayed partners group and, ask them. There are people who've been through disclosure, who've asked the wrong questions, who've asked the right questions. This is why we have no cost free, because we give this stuff away, partners groups for you to sit with a partner and say, oh, you had disclosure. What did that mean? All that kind of stuff. By the way, I wanted to say something to the person who wrote the last question, and I forgot, which is, we have a podcast. It's called Sex, Love, and Addiction. We have nearly 900,000 downloads. I say this because if you need to learn more about what betrayal is, what to expect from the person you're involved with, how you hope things will go, we have all these podcasts there you can ride in the car and just listen to, and they're free. The other thing I want to say is I have a YouTube channel, and Tami, I don't know if you know this, a lot of people, well, a lot say, I just saw that video you did for this school or university or whatever, and I got it, so there are resources provided where you can gain more information. And I really recommend every one of you, like I said, they're free, we don't charge, but there's a lot of good information there. As far as answering the question, I would absolutely write down everything I want to ask. I would run it by some other people. But as a therapist, here would be my bottom line, which is easier to say what not to ask about. It's easier for me to say what. I would not ask any graphic details. If you can see it physically, I wouldn't ask. So if my spouse said, I saw sex workers or prostitutes, whatever they wanted to say, and I was doing it, 5 times a week or 5 times a year, and it cost me $350 each time, I would want to know if they had, here's a good question, did you have safe sex or not? Did you have sex during COVID or not? Those kinds of things, just safety questions. Did you ever, so I think there's the basic safety questions. But in terms of detail, we don't believe that spouses are well served by being able to have an image of that other person and your spouse's experience in your head. So I would not want you to ask questions about how big their boobs were. I wouldn't want you to ask questions about how big his thing was. I wouldn't want to ask questions about what kind of sex they had. Where? Sure, I had sex in that hotel up the street. But what they did together, I just think that once you have it in your head, you cannot get it out of your head. And I've had so many spouses say, I want to know what position, and I want to know, what size cup, and I want to, and you can ask those things and you may get answers, but it does not serve your feeling better about yourself. And it does not serve your relationship going forward, because it's in there. And by the way, once you hear that this person he or she had sex with looked like this, you'll forever have in your mind, well, I don't look like that. And why don't they want to? In other words, it's a road for self-doubt and for doubt in the relationship. But where it was, when it was, how often it happened, how much money was spent, do you know the person? I think you have absolutely right to know that. No one. I don't want you talking to your next door neighbor and finding out it was your next door neighbor. But graphic details, that's the only way I can put it, or something that I would not want you to have running around in your head for the next 20 years. Tami, do you have a better or more evolved
Not
answer?
better, but no, I agree with that. I had somebody that was talking to you, and this is a while back, but she had 150 questions. And I was like, I bet we could get it down to 3. And we did. Like, I didn't list all 150, but we figured out what she was really looking for was safety. Like you're talking about, is there safety? Was there something in my house, in my car, in my, or with somebody that I know, those type of things. So we narrowed it down, because grilling each other, one question leads to another and to another, so it's one of those where having it be a contained, this is the information I need. I think it's important. How much did you spend on it? Was there safety? Was there like if they spent $8,000 on sex workers, that's $8,000 that is not in your
Kids college fund.
Yes, exactly. Or on your vacation fund or whatever it is, so but I'm always about, not getting the stuff stuck. I get a lot of calls from people who are like, I'm triggered by everything, because everywhere I see, it's something that he could have had sex with, or he could have been there, or
Right.
and so that, having too much information just, ping pongs in your head. So
and Tami, you touched on something I think I want to say to all the spouses, which is, in case you've not been around a while, you think, and I don't mean this any kind of accusation, this is just my experience as spouses, you believe that if you just have a little more information, then you will feel better, or that you'll know what you need to know to move forward. And my experience is the more you ask about, the worse it gets. That's why we do a formal disclosure with the right therapist, because we want to make sure that there aren't any more questions, that you do have all of the answers, that you know everything you need to know, so this doesn't go on forever. And the other piece of it is just related to asking all those questions is, I will say to the guys, and this is my belief, that they think, oh, you're looking at everything, my cell phone bill, every single thing about me, because you're looking for reasons to leave me. And I actually think that those of you who do detective work are looking for reasons to stay with us. I think you want to not look up and run into more pain if you stay with us. You want to not look up and think, what an idiot I am for having stayed. So I think a lot of your detective work is actually not to screw you, I'm going to find the thing you lied about. It may look like that, but underneath, I think it is, are you going to hurt me again? If we move forward, am I going to get let down again? I got to look everywhere to figure that out. It's worth noting that, underneath anger is fear. Anger is an expression of fear. It's a way we cover up fear. And if you take I'm going to find this and I'm going to find that, and I'm going to get this question, if you look at it as the sadness and fear of what might be falling apart, that's a lot harder. So anyway, thanks, Tami, for letting me go off on that.
Okay, the next question. How do you create a healthy sex plan? I'm in SA recovery for a couple of months now. My partner is a PA in recovery for 2 years. We have never been abstinent within our relationship.
Well, I'm a little confused. We've never been abstinent in our relationship means to me that you have some kind of sex life. I don't know if it's healthy or not. And then you're asking, how do you create a healthy sex plan? It would seem to me that someone would have created that plan before they started working on the sexuality in their relationship, because those plans are inclusive of, well, I would say, I'm looking at the thing that went by, and you said 3 questions. I'm not sure about 3 questions. Tami, they're questioning your questions, but I bet you could get it into 10.
Well, this was a particular person with a particular situation. So you can believe me or not. I literally said we can get down to 3 questions, and we did. So, but.
Well, a lot of that, and what Tami's talking about, and I'm sorry, I didn't mean to dismiss you, is, are you gay? Do you have this fetish, or do you not? Have you slept with my neighbor, or have you not? Sometimes the questions are very specific. And so I apologize. well, I can't say why that person said that, but I jumped on, yeah, it's going to be 25 questions. But Tammy's right. There are certain things that you just want to know, and that's enough. And you've been waiting 30 years to know, I've heard some spouses say. So anyway, I'm a little confused because if I were this person, I would have created a healthy sex plan before or during my relationship with my partner, not once I was working on my recovery. But in any case, what do you think the question is, Tammy? Would you mind asking it?
Well,
Because I'm a
to
little
me, this
unsure.
is, we've never stopped. We're both in recovery, but we've continued to have sex, but we've never taken a break to look at if our sex is healthy or not, or to even, find out who we are ourselves. So to me, that's a little bit of the challenges. If nothing changed, then then how do you figure it out? But absolutely with support from a qualified therapist, etc. So
And I wonder, what do you consider to be sex, and what do you consider to be intimacy? Because you could take a time out from vaginal sex, other forms of penetrative sex. That doesn't mean you can't hold each other. That doesn't mean you can't massage each other. That doesn't mean that and just say, we're going to stop now. And guess what? You can. But one of the things I'd be curious about is, what do you consider to be healthy sexuality? Because I consider about 85% of it have nothing to do with genitals, maybe 75%. It has to do with smell and taste and touch and looking and feeling and so what we would be doing at 2 years with couples is working on how they can grow the intimacy that precedes sex, that grows into sex. When you're going out with a stranger and you go have sex with someone you met 10 minutes ago, you don't have to worry too much about emotional intimacy, and you're not going to have any trouble getting off because it's new and it's exciting and all that acting out stuff. But that's not how you want to conduct your sexual life with your partner. And so if, as Tammy said, if you're still kind of doing it the same way you did before, it's hard to know if you are learning to be closer to each other. For example, real quick, one of the things that I think is an important part of healthy sexuality in recovery is talking to each other. That you can actually say, let's stop, I'm feeling distant, or you laugh, or you be silly, that sex isn't so important. The other thing I want to say to this couple is, what I often hear from sex addicts in recovery is, okay, this is great that I'm in this place, great that I'm working on that, but when do I get to the sex? Or it's really nice that we're having a great relationship, but what about the sex? And we have so much catching up to do with our partners around relationship and honesty and intimacy, and that sex is a good thing, and it's a good thing to have, but it would be so far down my list compared to all the emotional intimacy that I need to grow with a partner. And guess what? If you don't have sex for a while, nothing bad will happen. Nothing will fall off.
nothing falls
Nothing
off.
will break. Thank you, Jackie. All right. Anyway, let's keep moving.
Okay. So the next question, after 7 months and one full disclosure in May, I took a polygraph last Saturday. Pre-polygraph, I disclosed 3 more significant encounters. I passed all the questions on the polygraph, but the additional disclosures destroyed my wife. But the additional disclosures destroyed, I think, my
Destroyed
wife.
my life.
So yeah.
Well, that's not really a question.
No.
I don't think, but there's things to be said here. Tammy, why don't you start? Because I know your heart breaks and I want to run to the restroom. So
There's more below. So, okay, I got to find. So,
I'll just be right
I am separating for 3 months from my spouse, and we are seeking strategies on how to effectively do a separation in order to come back together. My emotional sobriety is a big issue. Are there tips on how to regain trust in emotional sobriety so my wife can see me differently? Yeah. This is one of those where I don't know, after 7 months and one full disclosure, what are you really doing for your recovery? If you're just seeing your therapist, I said it earlier, 50 minutes a week, the acting out is a symptom. You're never addressing in 50 minutes, you're talking about, what happened this week. You're never getting to the underlying issue. So I'm going to hold my rant on polygraphs. I am not a fan. I've been on other webinars. There's no research. I know everybody uses them, but I thought, man, basing my relationship status on something that is a coin toss, it's as good as a coin toss. I wouldn't do it, but everybody gets to choose. I know it's become protocol, but there's no
Nah,
research, there's no protocol.
it's
So
not a protocol. It's just
I know.
I'm sorry, Tammy, I don't mean to interrupt. It's what partners want to know absolutely that this is true, and you may, or polygraphs are very fallible. There's a reason they don't admit them in court. And a lot of times the people who are not in the legal system as polygraphers don't know what the heck they're doing, or they're no longer in the legal system because they didn't know what they were doing. And certainly it's hard for them to understand the nature of the questions we're asking versus somebody who robbed a bank. So what has happened, I think, over the last 10 years is there's been more and more of an interest from spouses in getting the truth. But what's being missed is the importance of growing honesty and growing. You have to give someone a chance to fail. Now, should he have told you these things? Absolutely. Is it horrible and awful and frustrating and terrible that he didn't tell you these things? Yes. Would I squeeze it out of him with a polygraph? Probably not. Probably not.
So
Go ahead,
I
Tammy.
want to jump in this though, because it says like, well, if you're going to do a disclosure, do a real disclosure. Don't
Right.
hold on to, like, this happens all the time. People hang on to a couple things because they're afraid that if their spouse finds out, then it's going to be over. Look what happened, so I'm really sorry. I'm really sorry for your wife. I got to tell you, I'm really sorry for your spouse. Tell the truth. Our clinical director says, tell the truth and tell it faster with a disclosure. If you're going to do the disclosure, do a real disclosure, get the benefit of a real disclosure. So, but to your question, I am separating for 3 months with my spouse. I love that you have a time frame. I love, because like the 3 years of nothing, we have no plan, we have no whatever. And we are seeking strategies on how to effectively do a separation in order to come back together. My emotional sobriety is a big issue. So are there tips? I don't know what you're doing for your recovery. I am suspect after 7 months. I mean, that's really early in recovery yet, but I am suspect that you aren't stepping up enough. If you haven't joined the Sex Addiction 101 work group, there's another one starting next week, November 3rd. Great foundational pieces, more peer support. If you're doing something every day for your recovery, it's going to make a difference. It's going to start showing, because you're going to start, really being able to step into that. Dr. Rob references his Out of the Doghouse book. It's how to, it is how to build trust, and that's where you're at. But I think it's on your spouse to set what boundaries your spouse needs to see from you, so that you've got benchmarks that that you can be working towards. Like, in 3 months, what is your spouse looking for to show that you are making progress? And we have lots of webinars on emotional sobriety, but also tolerating uncomfortable emotions. Like, you got in hot water because you lied by omission, you didn't tell the truth. How do you tolerate going, this is going to be uncomfortable, I know my spouse is going to be angry at me, but telling the truth is way more important than holding on to something because I'm afraid of his or her reaction. So I'll take a pause.
No, I actually want to move on, if that's okay,
Okay.
because
Okay.
Tammy doesn't really need me here. I just want to say that her answers are so good. No, you know that. There's a question I really want to answer that I saw, if
Okay.
that's okay.
Yeah.
And it's the last question in the open section, 539. It came in at 539.
Okay. SAs can and do recover from all forms of our acting out. If not, why are treatment, Brooks and 12 steps promoted? Why wouldn't it just be leave the losers? It is very hard to recover from SAPA, but some credit where credit is due, please. We are living proof that addicts can change. Many in our little group that are part of the Seeking Integrity team are testaments to that. I reached out to the alumni. It's been a couple months ago now, and I got these amazing stories back. Here's where I'm at. Here's what I'm doing. I mean, it was so fulfilling and empowering to me. So yes, we can, if we're willing to do the work. We can't just try. So that's the difference. It's action. Like in the 12-step AA big book, it says into action. That's key. Can't do it just by sitting on the couch thinking, oh, I'm going to try. Okay, so can I go back up to the top?
No, I want to answer it too.
Oh, sorry.
It's okay. We do this a lot. I mean, Tammy and I. So, okay.
Yes.
So I want to go back to, where was that question now?
I put it in answered, sorry.
Oh, okay. That's okay. I just need to find it.
It's at the bottom of the
Um,
answered.
right. So I'm a little picky about language. I'm very picky about language. After 11 books, I read things very carefully. And when I listen to people, and I think it's a gift that I have to be able to listen so clearly that I do good assessments, I listen very carefully to language, because people, cigars are not always cigars. And so what this person said, Tammy, I want to quote: sex addicts can and do recover from all forms of our acting out. And I would completely and utterly disagree with that statement as
Really?
strongly as I can, without question, because no addicts recover. We are in recovery.
Oh, fair,
As
fair.
sex addicts can
Recovery.
and do have an experience of recovery, as long as they are, as Tami said, working on this. And yes, the treatments and the books and the 12 steps are there to keep us in recovery. But it is by the grace of God that each day I have the opportunity to live without active addiction. And so I don't think I'm a loser because it still lives inside of me. I think I'm a winner for having seen how horrible and difficult it was, and having found a new way through those things you mentioned to live. Those things are not there just to help me stop acting out. As Tami said, that's the tip of the iceberg. The real thing is, what kind of human being am I? And how do I treat people, and by what rules do I live? So, and that requires, because of the way I think anyway, as an addict, a constant reevaluation of my decisions, my decisions. That's a good way. So I think that I strongly have feelings about this idea that there's a period on the end of that sentence. And the other piece, and I want to get to the other piece, but I saw you nodding your head, Tammy, so I thought, oh, that resonates with her. Is there something you
Mhm.
want to say about that?
No, I miss it. I never use recovered. Like I hear all the time, I'm a recovered addict. I'm like, never. And I've been doing this a few 24 hours. And I always say I'm in recovery, and I do think, we can continue that journey. I also wanted to tag on to what you said about, re-examining our decisions with the help of other people, because my thinking was completely faulty, particularly early on. I've gotten lots better, but there are still times that I go, I need to get, more input and insight, because I may be missing something. You mentioned before we started recording that you do a peer consultation group for therapists. And I love that they are coming in to present cases that they want to make sure that they're doing a great job for their clients. And that's the lens of we're constantly examining so that we
Right.
can continue to grow. So,
Yeah, I mean, there's a therapist. We run a consultation group. We have therapists who've been therapists for 25 years. They are certified in sex ed, but they don't want to be learned. They want to keep learning. It's more than that, I think, for addiction. Addiction lives inside of us. It is for lack of a better term, a brain injury, a mental disorder. It's issue like depression or anxiety. It requires monitoring. I might get out of depression and say, thank goodness I never want to be depressed again, but things happen. Somebody dies, all of a sudden I find myself. So, and by the way, we are not losers. I am not a loser whether I slip. I could go out and slip tonight with 5 different people in 5 different ways. I'm not a loser. I'm troubled. I'm challenged. I am back in. My sponsor used to say, I love this. He would say, I'm having a flare up of my mental illness, and I love that because he just had a flare up of the problem and he returned and normalized it. So, what I hear, and I just want to say a little bit of this in this question, is the other part. I hear somebody who wants to reassure their spouse that they're never going to slip and that's never going to happen. And I just hear that a little bit. And to me, the credit is for your showing up each day. Whether you're sober or you're not, the credit and the hero is the person who shows up. In fact, to me, the hero is the person who has a slip and goes back with their shame and their self-hatred and says, I got to tell you this, and I know you're going to hate me for it. That's strong. I'd rather you didn't have the slip, but to me, that's powerful. So I think there's a misjudgment about what recovery is. I feel like this is absolutely a husband who is wanting to say, it's perfect. And I guess the last piece is, I really want to answer this quickly, but I can't. is that when I walk into AA, I expect that someone's going to have 3 years or 5 years or 10 years, because you can live a perfectly happy life and never drink again. It may be a little hard in the beginning, but you know, you don't have to drink to enjoy your life. You don't have to drink to find joy. You don't have to drink to celebrate relationships. You don't. But there are other behaviors like eating, which you do have to keep doing, no matter whether you have an eating disorder or not. The solution is not to stop eating. That makes it much more difficult for the person to recover and stay in recovery. If you want to be sexual, if you want to eat, these are with us our entire lives, and they are a part of having joy and feeling connected. The recovering person who has 10 years at a meeting, and they say to me, yes, I have 10 years a sex addict. And I say, wow, that's really great. What has your 10 years been like? And he or she says, I haven't had sex in 10 years. That's not what we're looking for. So this is not an absolute. It is a struggle, and it is a struggle the rest of our lives. And I haven't met many sex addicts who have more than 5 or 6 years, because I think it is endemic to the problem. And I think you spouses ultimately are going to have to understand it's not permission. It's not, go ahead and do what you want, but we're going to struggle with this all our lives. And that's why I can go on this forever, right? The key to regaining trust and emotion, it's honesty. It's all about us being honest, not perfect. So, Tami, take it away.
Well, and that's a lot, but on a daily basis, if I take care of myself and do what I need to do for my recovery, I can continue just for today to have recovery. So to me, it's always, what do I need to do? What do I need to choose for today? So, okay. My SA husband confessed he has been aroused when he saw our 9-year-old granddaughter in her bathing suit. He said it was the only time it ever happened, and has scared and sobered him. Does this mean he's a pedophile?
Wow. That's, so I'm not sure how to answer this, because it's a really complicated question. If you said that your granddaughter was 17 years old and fully developed as a young woman, it's not unusual for a man to look over and say, oh my goodness, she's become a really attractive woman, and then look the other way. I don't think sexualizing for a short period of time a young woman who is developing and becoming beautiful, I'm talking about, please don't go after me, I'm talking about and I'm not talking about touch or anything. I'm just saying, if someone glances over and sees a 17-year-old and she's really completely evolved, it's not horrible for someone to notice that. However, if someone is pre-puberty, they have not developed, they don't look anything to anyone like an adult, that concerns me. And there's a little more to this that concerns me. I've not met any folks who are sex addicts who have ever been telling the truth when they said it was the only time. It can't be the only time. It's not the only time. And so there's a lot more you guys need to talk about and deal with. I do think it's important that he's told you this, because there's something going on that worries him. And if it were me, I just would probably be hanging out with him when he's with the grandkids, and not just until I find out more information. I absolutely would pay attention to this, but I wouldn't conclude anything about this. This is a guy who needs to get evaluated, go to a treatment center. It's very serious, but it does not mean that he is a pedophile. But there are issues for sure.
Yeah. And hopefully you didn't say how long he's been. I hope he's sober. I hope he's working on his recovery path. I hope he's working on those things. So the more he engages, in that, and there are, there are evaluations and things like that can be done, for people too. So, okay, next question. My SA
let me just say one more thing about that. I'm
sure.
so sorry.
Mm-hmm.
There is a difference between people who are attracted to inappropriate ages. There are difference between people who look at inappropriate porn because of age and sex addicts. You might look at 9-year-olds all day long. That doesn't make you a sex addict. It makes you a pedophile. So I just want to make these issues clear, that sexual offending, which is non-consensual sex, period, whether I know the person or not, if we're not both in agreement about being sexual and what we're going to do, then I am offending you. It has nothing to do with legal. It has to do with, so understand, if you're not old enough, then you can't consent. If you're not mentally healthy enough, you can't consent. You have to be fully available to consent for sexuality. So that's what offending means to me. And this is just very concerning. Anyway, Tami,
I want
sorry.
to take one more thing, or in a when there's a power difference, so you, because you can't consent if your job is on the line, or there's some other force.
Right. Well, but that's right. You can't consent if someone's going to not give you the raise if you don't have sex with them, or they're your lawyer and you're worried about your custody battle if you don't have sex with them. But it's also it's abuse. It's non-consensual by nature. Hey, Tami, can I just tell you one thing before we start the next
Sure.
question? This is completely personal, but I got to my computer tonight to get started on this meeting, and on my keyboard was this, I can't see if you see it, this like Ouija board.
Oh my gosh.
It's actually mints. See that?
Mystifying mints. Oh my gosh, that's so funny.
And the reason I got that is my husband of 20 years stopped at a Halloween store and picked up something for me. He picked me up Ouija board, mystifying mints, and put them on my computer. Do you know what that means? Do you know that's
I don't
better
know
than
what his
sex?
meaning behind
It's Halloween.
with it.
No, but I want
well,
to speak to
suppose,
them.
yes, okay.
Do you know what that means? Do you know that this stupid box of mints is everything? Do you know what it's like to know that I was thought of when I wasn't facing someone? Do you know what it means to me? And hopefully for you, I'm hitting a drum here for the addicts who are so dismissive of what their partners do on a regular basis, of the little things that we pay no attention to, because I didn't want to be minced today. And you want to know what a loving relationship is about? It's about little teeny things like this. It's about listening to someone when you don't feel like it, but you're going to listen because you know that it'll make them feel good. And I had to share that because 20 years and I still get mystifying Ouija mints. And it's everything. It's just everything.
And you're going to tell him that too.
And I'm already eating them.
Yeah. Okay, next question. My SA spouse moved out of the house on Friday. I still hope for a reconciliation, but I needed boundaries from his continued anger, blame shifting, and lying to me. He relapsed last week, and I can see that he is still acting out and trying to cover his tracks. Do I tell the CSAT?
I am looking for this one. Was it answered?
It's in the open.
Okay, thank you.
Top of
Sorry. Oh, I see. Well, I'm really glad you moved out.
No, the SA spouse.
Good. I'm really glad you kicked this person to the curb. I like that. I was going to say I'd rather they moved out than you. I think that's incredibly difficult and painful to make a decision that your sanity is worth more than the sadness you're going to feel when you're not together. And you will. It isn't just like when a lot of spouses say to me, well, I don't understand how I could still love them when they've hurt me so much. And just because someone hurts you doesn't mean the love goes away. It's grief. It takes a long time, regardless of how someone has treated you, for that love to go away. So I just want to say to you, despite that, you put yourself first, and you didn't allow this person to express anger and blame and lie to you, which, by the way, is abuse. It's verbal and emotional abuse. So what you're saying is, really, I decided that I was worth more than this guy hitting me all the time, or this girl hitting me all the time. I decided that wasn't okay, because every time we say, well, if you had better sex with me, I wouldn't go out there and do this, we might as well be smacking you across the face. Every time I spend 3 hours looking at porn, the minute we go to bed and I leave you to go to the porn, I'm smacking you across the face. Would I tell his therapist? I don't know. Tami, do you have a comment about that?
I would give him time to tell his therapist. I would give him like an appointment to see if he, because if his therapist is asking, how are things going? Oh, my relapse, I'm living outside the house now. Right. So I'm living in a tiny house down the street, I don't know, but it's one of those things where, like, I would give him a shot at that, and then asking for a session, or at the least giving the information, but asking for a session with the therapist and saying, things are deteriorating. Here's what's happened. Because I bet his therapist doesn't know any of that stuff. But you know what I thought? That's a guy that should come to our treatment program. That's the, that's one of the, I mean, this is what we do. I mean, he's continuing to struggle. Things have gotten worse. He's out of the house because he couldn't show up in a meaningful way. He can't stop acting out.
And wouldn't you feel more comfortable that he is with us or in some safe place being monitored than in a hotel or out doing all that stuff that he does? Anyway, I will say something about treatment. It's not just for the addicts. A lot of times spouses say, oh, thank goodness, I don't have to worry that this person is living with me every day. I don't have to be angered every single day. I get some time out. I did want to say something about telling his therapist. So this is related, but not direct. It blows my mind how much addicts lie to their therapists. And I'm not talking about a couple therapy where they don't want to be found out. I work with so many sex addicts therapists who say, he saw me for 3 years and just lied all the way through. And I thought, well, yeah, that's not unusual. But I think, what is the point of going to something like therapy? What's the point of being in an intimate relationship if you're not going to disclose who you are? If you're not going to, how do you, I mean, I know why. It's about holding on to control. I don't want to change how you think about me. I don't want anything in this relationship to change. I'm going to try to control it. And if I tell you the truth, it's out of control because I don't know what you're going to do. But why seek help and not let the person help you that you're there to see? And I hear it all the time. So, Tami, more questions?
Okay. Do you have
I'm
a
eating
suggestion?
mints, by the way. I'm
That's
eating
okay.
mints.
And then you're enjoying them. Do you have a suggestion on how to navigate dual addiction? I was a sex addict seeking love and needing to be wanted for 20 years. Then I introduced meth, which I used for 20 years. Both addictions have had their underlying issues, but I struggle navigating both addictions.
Well, not to be too self-promoting, but this in particular is why we created a treatment program, because so many men we work with, maybe half of them, have struggled with alcohol or struggled with opioids or struggled with heroin or struggled with meth. And they figured out, whether treatment or whatever, how to get sober from that. And then they realized that they were either still sexual acting out, or the sexual behavior brought them back to where they were using or created that potential, that the sexual acting out did not leave them feeling joyous and happy and free because they were still lying and keeping secrets. So one of the things that we exist for as a treatment program is for those people who have really begun to understand and get themselves around the drug problem, but relapse is right around the corner because they haven't dealt with the underlying sexual issues. I haven't been many places where I'm not running the place where you have an addicts program, substance abuse, and you're talking about sex. It just doesn't happen. And if you were the person in a drug-focused substance abuse treatment program to talk about sex, you would be the freak. You would be the odd one out, and that's not helpful. Most of the people we work with who have a drug and alcohol problem come to us because their sexual issues, their self-hatred, their acting out, their abuse was there far before their drinking and using. And now they're struggling with staying sober because their sexual issues lead them right back to it. And by the way, that can be what's underneath the iceberg, is those kinds of issues. Whether or not you're able to go to treatment or a treatment center, I think you have to work on the sexual issues themselves in order to maintain the bigger picture of healthy intimacy. So hopefully that's helpful.
It is. And we're out of time. So we'll be back next week and do it again.
Well, Tami, it's good to see you. And folks,
good to see you.
Oh,
there were more. They've been, there was more. So
have a wonderful evening. Thanks for
bye, everybody. Thank you.